If you're here, you want to get past the headlines, really understand the shifts happening.
Exactly.
Today, we're digging into a new central bank survey. We want to figure out what people are really thinking about housing prices, the economy, the big stuff.
Yeah, the mission is to pull out the key insights from this consumer survey, what it tells us about expectations, especially for housing, and just the general economic mood.
Okay, let's jump right in. Housing prices, that's always a hot topic.
Always.
The surveys showing expectations for rising prices are, what, at a 5-month high?
That's right. It's quite a notable peak. This index looks 1 year ahead, and being above that neutral level clearly means more people expect prices to go up than down.
Which is, well, it seems a bit counterintuitive maybe, given some recent government regulations aimed at cooling the market.
It does seem that way on the surface.
Yeah.
And the central bank even commented on this. They noted that, yes, apartment price growth in Seoul has slowed after those land transaction permit zones were redesignated. But, and this is the key part, the overall national expectation, the sentiment, it still points upwards. Officials are watching, monitoring the policy effects, but that underlying belief in rising prices is pretty persistent right now.
So a bit of a disconnect maybe? Or perhaps people think housing is just insulated somehow.
Could be. It suggests maybe a belief that housing has its own dynamics, separate from perhaps broader economic worries.
Interesting. Okay, let's broaden out then. What about overall consumer sentiment, the CSU's I?
Right, the Composite Consumer Sentiment Index, it actually improves slightly. Just a bit. It had dipped before, so this is a small rebound.
A rebound sounds good, but where does that leave us overall? Are people feeling optimistic?
Well, that's the crucial context. Even with that small improvement, the index is still sitting below the neutral 100 mark.
Okay.
Which means basically relative pessimism still outweighs optimism when you compare it to the long-term average. So maybe think of it as slightly less worried rather than actively cheerful.
Got it. Less gloomy, but not exactly sunny. Did the survey give any clues about what specifically people are feeling better or worse about?
It did, yeah. It broke down the components. So the outlook for future economic conditions, that improved, and also expectations for household spending ticked up.
Okay, so looking ahead, slightly more positive.
Slightly. But interestingly, the assessment of current economic conditions actually got worse. And other things, like how people feel about their current living situation, their expected future living situation, and their income outlook. Those were pretty much unchanged. Flat.
So it's a really mixed bag, better outlook for the future economy and spending, but feeling worse about right now and kind of stagnant on personal finance.
Exactly. It highlights this sort of nuanced feeling, not all doom and gloom, but definitely not confident either.
So for you listening, trying to make sense of this,
Right.
What's behind that flicker of future hope, even with, global trade issues and talk of a slow domestic recovery?
Well, the central bank's analysis points to two main things. First, a feeling that maybe political uncertainty has lessened somewhat.
Okay.
And second, some, perhaps, optimism about potential economic stimulus measures down the line.
Right.
Like maybe some help is coming.
Right. The prospect of a boost. That makes sense. But those broader worries haven't vanished.
Not at all. Those concerns about trade, about the recovery pace, they're still there. It really raises the question of how durable this slight sentiment bump is.
Definitely something to watch. Okay, let's quickly touch on interest rates and inflation, always critical for personal finances.
Absolutely. And here the expectations shifted too. The outlook index for interest rates actually rose.
So people expect rates to go up, or at least not down.
It suggests expectations for rate cuts have weakened significantly. People are less hopeful rates will come down soon. The thinking is it's tied to concerns about managing household debt, keeping that under control, and also recent increases in exchange rate volatility. Makes rate cuts seem less likely.
Okay, so less hope for cheaper borrowing and inflation.
Inflation expectations for the next year also nudged up slightly. Not dramatically, but another small increase.
So recapping quickly. Housing price expectations are up. Overall mood is slightly better, but still cautious. Less hope for rate cuts and slightly higher inflation worries. And this is all from a nationwide survey done just, earlier this month?
That's the picture, yeah. Conducted nationwide over about a week. It captures a specific moment in time, but reveals this interesting tension.
Tension is a good word. You've got this pocket of optimism, almost bullishness, about housing.
Right.
Set against a much more reserved, cautious view of the overall economy, and then layer on top the shifting views on rates and inflation.
Exactly. The optimism in one area feels a bit disconnected from the caution elsewhere. It makes navigating your own financial decisions pretty complex.
So the final thought for you to mull over today is this. How does that specific feeling about the housing market, maybe your own feeling, interact with these broader economic concerns? How do you balance that potential housing optimism against the reality of maybe higher interest rates or persistent inflation when making your financial plans? And looking ahead, what single element housing, general mood, interest rates, inflation do you think will be the biggest driver for the economy over the next year? Something to consider. That's our deep dive for today.